The year is 64 CE. You stand in the heart of Rome, the world's greatest city, its towering columns, grand temples, and bustling markets a testament to the power of an empire. The air smells of dust, oil, and the faint scent of burning incense. The streets are crowded, the city alive with noise, the cries of merchants, the rhythm of soldiers marching, the laughter of children playing in the alleys. The Roman Empire, your empire, stands tall, an unshakable fortress of power. But today, all of this symbol of eternal grandeur, begins to fade before your eyes. A distant crackle breaks through the familiar sounds. It's subtle at first, barely noticeable, like the rustle of wind through dry leaves. But then it grows louder, unmistakable. The crackling turns into a roar, a great, consuming sound that drowns out everything else. A violent heat presses against your skin, the kind that makes your heart race, your pulse quicken. You turn toward the sound, toward the growing inferno that stretches across the horizon, flames licking at the night sky. The fire is alive, twisting and crawling over the rooftops, devouring the wooden homes, the grand structures, the very essence of your city. The wind carries the scent of burning timber, of flesh, of destruction. The once proud buildings of Rome, symbols of empire and power, now stand as mere kindling in the flames. The streets, once filled with laughter and conversation, now echo with screams, with panic, with the sharp, terrifying sound of history being erased. It spreads with terrifying speed, like a living thing, moving relentlessly through the city. The narrow streets, the crowded neighborhoods, all become a trap. People rush in every direction, but there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The fire doesn't care. It is unstoppable, as if it's been waiting for this moment, waiting for Rome's unshakable foundation to crumble. You can feel the heat now, the air so thick it burns your lungs. The ground beneath your feet trembles. The flames rise higher and higher, consuming everything they touch. And still, you stand there, rooted to the spot, unable to look away from the destruction. There is no escaping it. It has begun, and it will not stop. But how did this happen? Who set this nightmare into motion? Was it an accident, a simple misstep, or something far darker, far more deliberate? The answers are hidden in the smoke, in the chaos. And the people, your people, are left to wonder, was this truly an act of nature? Or was it the work of someone in power, someone who wanted this, who needed this destruction to make a bold statement? Was it the gods who decided to punish the empire for its hubris, or was it the hand of a man, a ruler, who saw an opportunity to reshape his world at the cost of so many lives? The air is thick with questions, but there are no answers. Only the roar of the flames, the crackling of burning history. The city you knew is disappearing before your eyes. All that remains is this terrifying moment, suspended in time, with only one truth: this fire is not just a fire. It is a turning point. It is a reckoning. And you are here to witness it. Rome, the heart of an empire that stretched across the known world, throbs with life in every corner. The air hums with a constant buzz, a mixture of voices, footsteps, the clang of metal on metal, the cries of children, and the wheeze of tired laborers. This is no ordinary city, it is the lifeblood of civilization, pulsating with the energy of over 1 million souls, packed tightly into its narrow, bustling streets. The city, both grand and grim, is a place where opulence and squalor sit side by side, where marble statues of gods look down upon the suffering of the poor, and the golden gates of palaces open to reveal the lives of those who rule with unchallenged power. The streets are a maze of chaos. Narrow alleys wind through overcrowded neighborhoods, the ground covered in dust, litter, and the occasional discarded piece of pottery. In these cramped spaces, the poor live on top of one another, their homes built from wood, not stone, small, fragile structures that sway under the weight of life's struggles. The city's marketplaces are filled with the clamor of bartering, the scent of freshly baked bread mingling with the stink of sewage and refuse. The rich may live in luxury behind high walls, but the rest of the city is teeming with those whose lives are a daily fight for survival. The architecture, grand and monumental, reflects the power of Rome, but it's a power built on imbalance, on inequality. The soaring columns of temples dedicated to gods who demand reverence from the people, the vast forums where senators and rulers debate the fate of nations, and the public baths that offer a brief escape from the heat and filth of daily life. These are the visible marks of Rome's might. But for every grand structure that symbolizes the empire's strength, there are countless slums where life is a grim struggle, where the wooden homes are so close together that one spark could set the entire neighborhood aflame. The people move in a continuous flow, a river of bodies that pulses through the streets, along the marketplaces, and into the grand halls of government. But this is not a utopia. Poverty is rampant. The wealthy may flaunt their silks and gold, but for the poor, the streets are their homes, their sanctuary, their prison. There is no order, no system to contain the chaos. There are no fire escapes, no organized measures to protect the city from disaster. The buildings are made of wood, the streets narrow and winding, the air dry and stagnant in the summer heat. It's a tinderbox, a city built on the edge of disaster, a powder keg just waiting for the wrong spark to ignite it. And there, amidst the everyday hustle, the political intrigue, the merchants haggling over their wares, and the children playing in the shadows, there is the ever-present feeling that the city is on the brink of something. Something terrible. Something inevitable. Rome, the greatest city in the world, is both a symbol of triumph and a ticking time bomb. Its wealth and power are built on the backs of slaves, the blood of conquered peoples, and the sweat of the lower classes. The gods look down, indifferent to the suffering below, as the flames that will soon ravage the city begin to smolder in the hearts of the people. The grandeur of Rome is undeniable, but it is also fragile, its foundations built on conquest, on violence, on the exploitation of the weak. The cracks are beginning to show. The fire, now only a whisper on the wind, is a harbinger of what is to come. But you cannot see it yet. Not fully. You can't feel the heat that is about to sweep across the city, turning it into an inferno. You don't know that in the next few days, the streets will be choked with smoke, the sky will darken with ash, and the city that once stood as the jewel of the empire will be torn apart. You can't see the lives that will be lost, the families that will be torn apart, the history that will be erased by the fire's relentless hunger. You stand in the middle of it all, oblivious, watching the city pulse around you, unaware that you're living on the edge of a disaster that will forever alter the course of history. The streets are teeming with life, but the seeds of death are already sown in the cracks beneath your feet. If you think this was just another fire in a big city, you're wrong. Rome was the empire's heartbeat. If you think this doesn't matter, subscribe and join those who care about the untold stories of history. Or, feel free to tell us why you're passing on this journey in the comments. It begins in the heart of the city's slums. In the shadows, where the poorest of Rome's citizens reside, packed together in haphazard wooden homes, the first embers spark. It's no surprise, this part of the city is a tinderbox. The narrow alleys, choked with filth and refuse, are suffocating under the weight of too many people. The homes, constructed from rotting timber, are pressed together so tightly that a single flame could consume them all. The air is dry, the wind picks up, and the heat of the summer is like a furnace, waiting for something, anything, to ignite it. Was it an accident? Perhaps the careless flick of a torch too close to the dry walls of a house. Or maybe a spilled oil lantern, unnoticed in the dark, left to spill its contents over the wooden floor. Or was it something far darker? Something deliberate, the result of someone setting fire to the fragile city walls, watching with hidden eyes as the flames spread, licking at the edges of Rome's fragile empire. Rumors begin to circulate, as they always do in Rome. The gossip spreads faster than the fire itself. Some say it was a mistake, a simple accident, a stray spark in a city too crowded and too cramped to withstand such misfortune. But there are whispers, too. Whispers that speak of arson. Of a calculated move to reshape the city, to tear down the old and build something new. Some claim that the fire was started intentionally, that someone, perhaps even the emperor himself, sought to wipe away the slums, to clear the land for grander projects, for a new Rome to rise from the ashes. And then there are those who believe the gods themselves are to blame. Perhaps it was a divine punishment, a wrathful storm sent from Olympus to punish the arrogance of Rome, its thirst for power and expansion. The priests and oracles are silent, leaving the city's population to turn on one another. The air is thick with uncertainty and fear, as the flames climb higher, swallowing whole neighborhoods and cities, leaving nothing but ruins in their wake. The fire begins to spread, almost too fast to follow. It tears through the southeastern districts of Rome, where the poorest citizens live. The narrow alleys become corridors of hell, choked with smoke, with burning wood and human misery. People are trapped, too many in too small a space, running in panic, screaming for escape, only to find the fire waiting for them at every turn. It moves with frightening speed, as if it has a mind of its own, driven by the wind that howls through the streets, pushing the flames deeper into the city. And yet, no one comes to stop it. The city has no means to fight it, no organized fire brigades to contain the destruction. The Roman firefighting system, if it could be called that, is rudimentary at best. Nothing more than a handful of men with buckets of water, too few to even slow the progress of the flames. The fire, fueled by dry timber and the heat of a summer's day, has no opposition. It burns with an insatiable hunger, tearing through the city for 6 days and 7 nights, as the fire devours Rome's very soul. By the time the flames finally begin to subside, 10 of Rome's 14 districts lie in ruin. The destruction is unimaginable. The grand temples that once stood proudly, reaching for the heavens, are now mere piles of ash. The marketplaces that were once filled with the chatter of merchants, the clink of coins, and the smell of spices and fresh bread, are gone, replaced by smoldering wreckage. The homes of the poor, fragile and close together, are reduced to nothing more than charred remnants. The streets, once teeming with life, are now eerily silent, filled only with the smell of burning flesh and the bitter taste of smoke in the air. Rome has been devastated. And still, no one knows the true cause of the fire. Some look to the emperor, Nero, with suspicion. Could he have been behind it? Could he have used the fire as an opportunity to remake the city in his own image? Some believe he may have set the blaze himself, watching from a distance as the flames tore through his city, with plans already in place to rebuild. Others point to the gods, wondering if this was some form of divine punishment, a message to the arrogant Romans who had built an empire on the backs of the conquered. Or perhaps it was simply an accident, a fluke of fate that, in a moment of pure tragedy, spiraled out of control. Theories abound, but the truth, buried beneath the ashes, remains hidden. The flames have spoken their terrible truth, and now, only silence remains. The fire spread fast, but not as fast as the gossip in Rome. If you're not interested in knowing who or what caused this catastrophe, unsubscribe now. Or better yet, tell us why you think it doesn't matter in the comments below. The fire rages, unchecked, as Rome succumbs to the flames. But where is Nero? The emperor who holds the reins of the most powerful empire in the world, where is he when his city cries out in agony, when his people are reduced to ashes? Nero is not in Rome. He's far from the destruction, in the comfort of his villa in Antium, a beautiful retreat nestled along the coast, far removed from the devastation that's sweeping through the heart of the empire. While the cries of the Roman citizens echo through the night, and the smoke of the fire chokes the life out of the city, Nero remains at ease, enjoying his time far from the burning chaos. Some say he had no idea of the fire's full scope until it was too late. Others, more suspicious, whisper that the emperor, notorious for his decadence and indifference, may have known far earlier than he let on, and chose to remain distant from the horror. The rumors begin to spread almost as quickly as the fire itself. They call him cruel, aloof, detached from the suffering of his people. The whispers grow louder, spreading through the city like wildfire, faster than the flames that consumed Rome's streets. Did he start it? They ask. Did Nero set the city ablaze, hoping to clear the way for his grand vision of a new Rome? A Rome rebuilt in his image? The fire, after all, offered the perfect opportunity. In the chaos, the truth blurs. Some claim that Nero, like a puppet master, watched as the flames engulfed his city from a safe distance, waiting for the right moment to intervene, but only when the damage was so catastrophic that it could no longer be ignored. Others suggest that Nero may have ordered the fire, seeking to destroy the old city to make way for his massive architectural projects. He had plans, grand plans, to build a city worthy of his own legend, a city that would surpass even the greatest structures of the ancient world. Was the fire an act of reckless abandon or a calculated move to reshape Rome? But what truly shocks the people of Rome isn't just the fire, it's the rumors that spread in its wake. Word reaches the ears of the citizens that Nero, rather than rushing to command the city's forces or assist with relief efforts, chose to indulge in his own pleasure during the catastrophe. The infamous tale begins to spread. Nero, supposedly, played the lyre as Rome burned. The image is grotesque, almost too absurd to believe. The emperor, sitting comfortably in his villa, strumming his lyre and singing, while his people are consumed by fire. The laughter of his courtiers and the burning city become intertwined in the collective memory of Rome, leaving a scar on the nation's soul. It's an image that would stick in the minds of Romans for generations to come. Nero, oblivious to the suffering, playing his music while the empire collapsed around him. How could he? How could a ruler so detached, so callous, let his people endure such torment while he did nothing? The flames, once a symbol of the city's power, now stood as a symbol of Nero's indifference. But even Nero couldn't stay in hiding forever. The damage was too vast, the destruction too great. The emperor returned to Rome, as the people of the city, now desperate and broken, looked to him for aid. Nero's actions, or lack thereof, had created a rift between the emperor and his people, a divide that would only widen as the fire's devastation unfolded. He took steps to address the crisis. He promised to rebuild. He called for massive construction efforts, but the scale of the damage meant that it would come at a steep price. To fund his vision of a reborn Rome, Nero imposed crushing taxes on his people, putting them further into poverty. The cost of rebuilding became too much for the average citizen to bear. What started as an attempt to soothe the wounded city only deepened the wounds. The emperor's plans, which should have been a balm for the people, became a further source of suffering. The people grew restless. The economic strain, the heavy taxes, and the emperor's extravagant plans to rebuild the city in his own image only made matters worse. Nero, the man who had watched his city burn, was now the man whose decisions kept it in a state of turmoil. The fire may have been extinguished, but the scars, both physical and psychological, remained. The people of Rome looked at Nero with distrust. The once legendary emperor now stood at the center of a deeply divided city, his legacy tarnished by his indifference and the ruthless measures he had taken in the wake of disaster. The fires of Rome were extinguished, but the fire in the hearts of his people, burning with anger, confusion, and resentment, would continue to smolder for years to come. Nero's actions, or lack thereof, were nothing short of scandalous. If you think history's worst leaders shouldn't be held accountable, you can leave. But if you want to dive deeper into his horrific reign, hit subscribe and share your thoughts on Nero's cruelty in the comments. The fire finally dies down, but the damage it leaves behind is impossible to ignore. The air is thick with smoke, the smell of burning flesh, wood, and history still clinging to the ruins of the once great city. As the embers fade, the true extent of the destruction becomes clear. Rome, the magnificent, the untouchable, is nothing but a broken shell, a city in ruins. Nearly 70% of it has been reduced to ash, the streets where once there was life now empty, the silence deafening. The rich may have their stone villas and their marble palaces, but for the vast majority of Rome's citizens, there is nothing. Thousands are left with nothing but the charred remains of their homes, homes that once held families, memories, livelihoods. The poor, who already lived in squalor, are now left to dig through the rubble, searching for scraps of their former lives. There are no blankets, no food, no shelter, only the grim reality of a city that has been shattered beyond recognition. The devastation is more than just physical. It is psychological. The very fabric of Roman society is torn apart. The marketplace that once buzzed with the energy of commerce is now silent, its stalls burned to the ground. The homes of the common people, crowded together like cattle in the heart of the city, have vanished. The temples, the churches, the monuments to the gods, symbols of the power and immortality of Rome, are nothing more than blackened stone and ash. And through it all, Nero, the emperor who stood by as his city burned, begins to act, though perhaps not in the way the people of Rome had hoped. Nero, ever the showman, decides this catastrophe is his moment, his opportunity to remake the city in his image, to create a Rome even more glorious than before. He begins to push through a plan, a grand, centralized vision of rebuilding. A new Rome, one that would be a shining beacon of his greatness. But this is no effort of restoration for the people. No, this is Nero's Rome, grandiose, extravagant, and built at the expense of those who have already lost everything. The streets are widened, the architecture made more opulent, but it is not for the common people. It is for Nero, for his vanity, for his need to leave behind a legacy of grandeur, even if it means draining the last bits of wealth from his suffering citizens. The cost of this rebuilding is staggering. The people of Rome. The wealth of the empire is funneled into the creation of monumental projects, projects that serve only to glorify the emperor while his people remain broken. The public baths, the temples, the new palaces, all stand as shining symbols of Nero's excess, while the common people are left to scrape by in the ruins. The emperor, so determined to build a new empire from the ashes of the old, ignores the cries of his people, who are still starving, still homeless, still mourning the loss of everything they once held dear. And as Nero's plans unfold, public opinion grows colder. His extravagant spending, his lavish new building projects, only serve to highlight the stark contrast between his desires and the suffering of his people. The grand new buildings rise from the ruins, but they do nothing to heal the wounds of those who have lost everything. For the citizens of Rome, there is no relief, only the crushing burden of taxes and the knowledge that the emperor has used their suffering to fuel his own ambition. Rome is not being rebuilt for the people, it is being rebuilt for Nero. His city, his vision. The poor, the homeless, the widowed, they are left to rot in the streets while the emperor paves the way for a future that only he will benefit from. The emperor's ego has consumed the city. His image is all that matters now. Rome has burned, but the soul of the city, its people, is now being torn apart by the very hands that should have lifted them up. Nero's response to the fire is not one of empathy, but one of exploitation. He has taken the disaster that has wrecked the lives of thousands and turned it into his personal triumph. A victory not for the people, but for his own legacy. The scars of the fire may fade in time, but the scars of Nero's actions will last forever. His failure to lead, his failure to care for his people, will go down in history as one of the greatest betrayals the empire has ever known. The flames of Rome may have been extinguished, but the fire of Nero's cruelty burns on, a darkness that will stain his name for centuries. This could have been a turning point for Rome, but Nero turned it into his own personal glory. If you don't want to miss the full story of Rome's darkest days, make sure you're subscribed. And if you think it doesn't matter, let us know why you feel that way in the comments. Rome is smoldering. The echoes of the fire still linger in the hearts of the citizens, their cries of loss, their desperation for answers. As the city lays in ruin, Nero's eyes shift, his gaze not on the people, not on the rubble, but on his own reflection, on his own image, on his legacy. The whispers in the streets are growing louder. Who did this? Who is responsible for this nightmare? The fire has consumed the city, but it has also turned the people's fury toward their emperor. The flames have scorched more than just buildings, they have ignited resentment, distrust, and anger. Nero, with his lavish plans and brutal demands, finds himself at the center of the storm. But Nero will not be blamed. He will not bear the weight of the fire's destruction. He needs someone else to carry it. He needs someone to blame. And in the shadows, there are those who have already been vilified, the Christians. They were already seen as outsiders, strange, even dangerous to the Roman way of life. Their beliefs, their refusal to honor the Roman gods, were a thorn in the side of a city that prided itself on its traditions. And so, when the fire's rage and public opinion turns against Nero, he seizes the opportunity. The Christians are easy targets, too easy. They have no defenders, no powerful allies, no voice that can stand against the emperor's accusations. And so, Nero declares them guilty. He accuses them of setting the fire, a claim so baseless, so absurd, that no evidence is needed. It doesn't matter. The city is in chaos, the people are desperate for an explanation, and Nero gives them one, a scapegoat. What follows is a nightmare of cruelty. The Christians, rounded up in the dead of night, are dragged from their homes, their families, their hiding places. They are beaten, tortured, and blamed for a disaster they did not cause. Their faith, once a private matter, now becomes the justification for their public destruction. They are paraded through the streets, humiliated, degraded, like animals before a bloodthirsty crowd. The executions begin, first with the easy, cruel methods, burning alive, tied to stakes and set aflame, their screams reaching the heavens as Nero watches from his palace, oblivious to their suffering. Then come the beasts, wild animals, starved and enraged, set loose on those who have already been condemned. The crowds cheer as Christians are torn apart, their blood mingling with the dust and the ash of the city that they are blamed for destroying. It is an image of grotesque cruelty, one that will haunt the streets of Rome for generations to come. But the persecution doesn't stop there. Nero's actions set a precedent. The Christians become the first martyrs of Rome, sacrificed on the altar of the emperor's ego, of his need to deflect blame, of his hunger for control. What started as a single act of scapegoating spirals into something far more horrific, the beginning of a century-long persecution that will stain Rome's history. The flames of the fire may have been put out, but the flames of hatred, of fear, of violence, continue to burn. The Christians, the innocent, the faithful, have been marked as enemies of the state. They will be hunted, tortured, and executed for years to come. And Nero, having turned his own people into monsters in the eyes of the world, will continue his reign of terror, unchecked and unchallenged, his name forever tied to this dark chapter in history. Christians became the first martyrs of Rome because of Nero's scapegoating. If you don't care about the beginning of a major historical tragedy, you don't deserve to know the rest. Subscribe, or leave your thoughts on Nero's cruelty in the comments. The years pass, and the flames that once consumed the city begin to fade into memory. But what is left? What will Rome remember? Nero's name, once a symbol of power, now stands as a warning. His legacy is one of excess, of cruelty, of an emperor who burned his own city to fuel his ambition. But his legacy doesn't end there. The fire he set, both literal and figurative, will mark the history of Rome for years to come. Nero's reign, already tarnished by his indifference and his cruelty, takes a turn for the worse. His extravagance, his obsession with his own image, and his disregard for the suffering of his people reach a breaking point. His empire begins to crack, the foundations weakened by his own actions. The Senate, once loyal, now turns against him. The whispers of betrayal, of revolt, grow louder. And one day, the emperor finds himself alone, his army, once loyal, now turning their backs on him. In the end, Nero's life ends as violently as his reign. The Senate declares him a public enemy, and in a final act of desperation, he takes his own life. The emperor who once stood at the top of the world, the emperor who watched his city burn, dies in a dark, lonely corner of his palace, his final moments a reflection of the cruelty and madness that defined his rule. But the fire he started will not die with him. The effects of Nero's actions are felt long after his death. The damage he inflicted on Rome, on its people, on its soul, cannot be undone. The empire, though it survives, is never the same. The Julio-Claudian dynasty falls with his death, and the memory of Nero, his cruelty, and his disregard for the lives of his people live on as a dark stain on the annals of history. Rome, the eternal city, will rebuild. But it will never forget the flames, the suffering, the betrayal that marked this moment in time. If you've stuck around this long and still haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? Don't let Nero's legacy go unnoticed. Subscribe now or share in the comments why you're choosing to ignore one of the worst emperors in history. The fire has burned itself out, but the scars it left on Rome are deep and permanent. The flames that consumed the city not only ravaged the landscape but tore through the very fabric of Roman society. It was more than just a physical disaster, it was a moment that exposed the cracks in the empire's foundation, and the consequences of Nero's failure to lead. Rome, once a proud symbol of imperial might, lay in ruin. But amidst the ashes, something began to stir. The fire that had consumed so much of the city also laid the groundwork for something new, something that would alter the course of history forever. In the aftermath of the destruction, the rebuilding began, but it wasn't just the city that was rebuilt. Rome, in its agony, found a new identity, shaped by the hands of those who had been pushed to the margins of society, the Christians. Before the fire, they were a small, persecuted sect, considered strange, even dangerous by the Roman elite. But now, in the wake of the catastrophe, they began to rise. The fire, though a devastating blow, forced the Roman world to confront its own fragility. The emperor had failed. The gods had remained silent. And in the ashes of the old Rome, the Christians found an opportunity to establish themselves, to build their communities in the cracks that Nero's empire had left behind. The rise of Christianity, though a slow and painful process, can trace its roots back to this fire. For the Christians, the fire was a moment of suffering, but it was also a moment of triumph. They had been blamed, tortured, and killed by Nero, but in their martyrdom, they became symbols of faith, resilience, and hope. Rome's skyline may have burned, but the faith of the Christians was forged in the flames, and from this, a new power began to take shape. The city was rebuilt, yes, but it was never the same. Nero's lavish building projects, designed to glorify himself, ultimately left Rome divided. The empire, once a beacon of stability and unity, was now a fractured collection of greed, excess, and suffering. Nero's vision of a magnificent city was built at the expense of the very people who had suffered the most. And even as his plans unfolded, the people of Rome continued to endure the consequences of his mismanagement. The fire that had ravaged the city was not just a natural disaster, but a manifestation of the dangers inherent in unchecked power and neglect. Nero's reign had been marked by cruelty and indulgence. He had set the fire, either through negligence or intent, and while he rebuilt his city, he did so with a cold, heartless drive to leave behind a legacy that reflected only his desires. The fire was more than just a disaster, it was the manifestation of everything wrong with his reign. The fire didn't just burn Rome, it revealed the rot at its core. It revealed how fragile the empire truly was, and how easily its rulers could be swept away by their own hubris. But the fire also marked a turning point. It was a moment that exposed the dangers of imperial power, the perils of a ruler who prioritized their own glory over the welfare of their people. Rome would never be the same after the fire. The city may have been rebuilt, but the trust in its rulers, its emperor, was gone. Nero's name would be forever tied to this moment of catastrophe, a dark chapter that stained the history of the empire. Yet, even as Nero's reign came to a violent end, the impact of the fire would be felt long after his death. The flames of Rome burned in the hearts of those who had suffered, and those flames would give birth to a new world, one where the empire's days of glory were replaced by a new, more powerful force, Christianity. And in the years that followed, as the empire crumbled, Christianity would rise, replacing the gods of Rome with a new vision of faith, hope, and resilience. The fire of Rome was not just a physical destruction, it was a turning point in history. It marked the beginning of the end for the mighty Roman Empire, and the birth of something new, something that would change the course of history forever. It was a tragedy that echoes through time, reminding us of the dangers of unchecked power, the fragility of empires, and the resilience of those who endure even the most horrific of trials. The Great Fire of Rome was a tragedy that echoes through history. If you don't think this story deserves to be remembered, feel free to unsubscribe, but for those who want more untold history, join us by subscribing and comment your thoughts below.